Hi, I want to welcome everyone to today's interview, and we're probably going to go about 30 to 40 minutes, so I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. And the title of today's presentation is going to be Good to Great, Industry Leaders Share Proven Strategy for Sales Success. And I'd just like Gerry to introduce this training class and say a few words about it before we jump into the presentation.
Yeah, great. Before we jump into the meat, I just wanted to let everybody know that the four of us, and we're going to talk about introducing ourselves here in just a little bit, but we're doing a 2-day master class in Detroit, Michigan, and that's going to be November 9th and 10th. So I want to make sure you mark your calendars on it. It's going to be a great 2-day event. We'll give you some more details on that throughout this quick little interview here today, but if you can just circle that on the calendar, it'd be much appreciated, and stay tuned to the end and we'll talk about all of the details.
Right. Thanks, Gerry. So I have four very special guests today, and before I let them talk, I just want to say a few words as an introduction. I actually was introduced to Gerry probably about 4 years ago now. And it was through a mutual connection of ours, Brian Nerger, who owns Nerger's Auto Express in Bound Brook, New Jersey. And he said, "Hey, Chris, there's somebody that you should meet." And I said, "Yeah, sure. Who is it?" And he told me a story. So the story that he told me about it was, he said, "You know what? I have this coach, and I went up for a service advisor training, and I was in the car going from New Jersey up to Ohio, and I thought I was crazy doing that drive, and I didn't know why I was doing it." And he said, "It was the best thing that I ever did for my business." And he said, that week when I got back from that training, my ARO went up 30%, and it just went up from there. And he said, "You've got to meet this person." So I said, "Yeah, I do. I've got to meet this person." And so he introduced me to Gerry, and I subsequently ended up meeting Laura, and I subsequently ended up meeting Bill and Leanne. And one of the things that really impressed me is, from my perspective with Technician Find, is I don't always see the inner workings of a shop. When I know that a shop is working really well, it's because I see it through the eyes of hiring. So when I send a bunch of applications to a shop and they have a problem hiring or they're not able to hire, I start thinking there's something wrong. But whenever I send applications to Gerry and Laura or Bill and Leanne, they would always hire very quickly. And that's a signal to me that things are really running smoothly, and that they've really thought through the processes. They've really thought through the workflows. They've thought through the things that are important, and they present this image to their employees. So that's one of the things that really impressed me. And what I'd like to do now is, Gerry told me a story that I think is really, really relevant to this training and to what we're talking about. And he says that every time your phone rings, it's like holding a lit $100 bill. And if you don't convert that call, you might as well let it burn. That's the reality of the auto repair business, where the cost of attracting customers is high and the cost of losing them is even higher. But what if there's a way to transform every call into an opportunity, every customer into a loyal fan, and every service advisor into a superstar? And that's what our guests today are going to talk about, with over 120 years of combined experience. And that's what they've achieved in their shops. And in this episode, we're going to show you how they did that. So we're going to talk about some things like the art of no selling in sales, the power of plug and play scripts, and the impact of a team that's inspired and accountable. Because when you master these skills, you don't just boost your revenue, but you change your life. So let's go around the horn and introduce yourself. Tell us about your shops. Tell us about how many years you have of experience and how you became an expert in sales training for service advisors.
So my name is Leanne Best. I'm with Mighty Auto Pro in Medina. I work with Bill Hill, who's owned it for 27 years. My expertise really lies in phone training. I am absolutely passionate about the telephone and converting every single call into dollars in your shop. That's where I'm at.
Thanks, Leanne.
Hi, my name's Laura Frank, and I work with my husband, Gerry Frank, in the auto repair industry. I was just looking today. I started in the industry in 1994, so 30-year anniversary this year. My passion is with the scripting and putting a lot of processes in place and training at the front counter. And I'm also passionate about brakes for breasts.
My name is Bill Hill, and I own Mighty Auto Pro in Medina, Ohio. We're a 17-bay operation, 10,000 square feet. We're about 25 miles south Cleveland. Medina proper is only about 35,000 people. I've been in the business since I was about 15 years old, so it's been over 50 years.
Fantastic.
And my name is, as Laura has said, Gerry Frank, and we've owned a shop for over 30 years, and boy, that makes us sound old. Laura, when you said 1994, probably some of the listeners on the call weren't even born in
Probably.
1994. What I think about when I say that is the way I did things or the way we did things early on isn't the way we do things now. Things have completely changed. We've gone from handwritten repair orders to customers having all this information on their fingertips on their phone. And although, technology is great, sometimes those are some of the obstacles in sales. So you have to overcome some of that new technology. Chris, when you said there's no selling in sales, it's true. Today, I like to think we're information specialists. You present all that information to the customer, and if you do it in the right manner and let the customer decide, the customer becomes, the buyer. We're no longer selling, and there's a huge transition in that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's funny. One of my mentors told me, new tools, old rules. So the rules never change, but you have new tools that you can use to implement those old rules. So I just want to open up this question to the panel for right now. What's the biggest frustration of not having a well-trained service advisor that you've seen? And all of you have worked with other shops. You've worked in your own shops. What are those issues that you see coming up over and over again that signal that you need more training for your service advisors?
Chris, you touched on it about being able to hire quickly. Chaos in the environment. Who wants to work in an environment with chaos? And so if you don't have good training, if people don't know what a good job looks like, how can they do a good job? How can they perform well? And so for me, it's chaos. And that was one of the things when I first got in 94, that we had to work through, right? And it took a while to get all those systems and processes and scripts in place. But the elimination of chaos is in my book, very high.
Right. And that truly goes hand in hand with my passion for phone training. And that is such a frustrating point for me when I mystery shop calls or I'm doing phone training with calls, because unfortunately, most shops, it's a shoot from the hip. Here's how the owner told me to answer the phone approach. So with the proper systems and procedures, it's incredible how many of those phone calls you can convert. And the perfect example is, let's just say the price shopper. Nobody likes the price shopper. They call in and it's like, hey, how much for brake pads on a 2011 Dodge Dart or whatever it is? You give them the price. Next thing you know, you hear click and they hang up on you. That's not the way it has to be. It is so very possible to convert those phone calls, get those cars in your shop, then ultimately convert the customers into a raving fan. So lots of opportunity. And I just, especially, being in the business, hate to see missed opportunity. So that's kind of my passion.
That's great.
For me, I'm going to say work culture is a big part of it. Having a culture where people want to come to work and they want to be a part of the team and they feel like they're a part of something. I think that's a huge part of it. And Leanne and I have spent a lot of time and effort over the years building our culture. And I think workflow is also a big part of it, right? Because everyone knows what they're supposed to do next without having to be physically told, right? We don't have to lead them around and say, I want you to do this or this. It's all up in front of them. We have a system and procedure set up so that they know what the next vehicle is they have to bring in and what they have to do to it.
Gotcha.
2 quick points. One, I want to go back to what you said early on about hiring, and then it kind of ties into these systems, the processes, the culture. How many of you would really be okay with this new hire going in right during your first interview, meeting the rest of the team in the shop, taking them through the shop and having them talk with your technicians? No, boy, back in the early days, you would want to separate them. They might say something bad about you. But, when you get things right and you get that team culture, everything just goes. And that's when really you become the hunted when you're hiring. But the other thing I just wanted to touch on real briefly was, I think as a shop owner, we get stuck in complacency. You have no idea what is possible in your shop. We kind of settle for okay. And I can tell you firsthand, sometimes from my experience, often shop owners make terrible teachers. They might be good at doing, but they're not really good at showing and training. So, my thing would be to let us do maybe what you can't.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And, before this episode, we were chatting a little bit and you shared some really interesting information about what you see the problems are through the shop owner's eyes, what they think their problems are. And the 2 big ones were increasing car count. That's usually one of the biggest ones. And then the other one is maybe if I can just hire a unicorn, that would solve all of my problems. So So I just want to bust those myths right now, using your combined experience here. Why are these not the biggest problems that you see, and what can shop owners do about that?
Well, I think I'll address the car count problem first. So I'm just going to give you personal information, right? Mighty Auto Pro information. So in 2013, I just have a few notes here I have to look at. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, sure.
2013, we did 5,031 cars. Our average ticket was somewhere around $328, and we did $1.6 million, right? So that's 5,000 cars. As of August of this year, we did 22,308 cars. We're already at $1,567,000. Our average ticket is $679. You do not need more cars. You need to focus on the cars you have and slow the process down.
That's fantastic.
Definitely.
More with less.
Yes. Everybody seems to think it's car count, and rarely that's the case. But, on the other hand, you mentioned hiring a unicorn. So being in this business, for several years, we used to really look for that superstar salesperson, that person that could sell ice to Eskimos. And we all know who we're talking about. Man, they just have the gift of gab. They're just born. I think they were a born salesman. They came out of the womb and they knew everything about sales. And, those people are one in a million. And I really think if you want to call them, they've become almost hired guns today. Today, we have such a challenge in the job market and all of that, finding those people, and they command top money. It's like looking for that needle in a haystack or that unicorn, as you mentioned, Chris. But I think, as you'll learn by using some of these, tried and proven strategies, I think you could take somebody that doesn't have that skills, somebody green. In a little bit, I'm going to tell you about one of our employees who knew nothing about cars and how we took her from, just a CSR, not just a CSR, but no experience in sales to over $1 million in sales just by learning some of the strategies we're going to talk about today.
That's great. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about that.
And it's more important to tag on to Gerry about the person's attitude, right? Are they willing? Do they want to be a team player? And that's important too.
Because you can't teach personality.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So what are at a day-to-day basis, what are those critical events that happen, and the real reason why most shop owners aren't where they want to be? And how do you address that in this training?
Think about the day in a shop. So I always try to maybe follow the keys, but I want you to picture like a big circle. I'm drawing a big circle here. And, the first part, Leanne mentioned it before, man, we can't do anything until we get a car in the shop. So how do you convert that incoming phone call? So many people think they do a good job at it, but then we may mystery call their shop. Like, oh my gosh, we get all those cringing people in the seats at a live event. So the first part is, man, we have to be able to get that customer into the shop. And that's a lot in scripting. We do a lot of that, but that's, if you want to call it act one, we got to master that. The second thing is sales. You've got to really do a good job and focus in on how you present that work. And a big part of that today is the digital vehicle inspection. Listen, when you tell a customer that we're going to do an inspection on your car, I think they all start squirming and thinking, here he comes, he's going to try to sell me a bunch of stuff. So, how do you overcome that? And I think that's a really important part. Next, Bill mentioned it a little bit earlier, you got to get all the work done. And one of the things I think that a service advisor has to do, he's got to be an excellent communicator with the staff, because he's not only selling, he's also kind of leading that team of horses in the back. So you got to have great leader in their efficiency. And then lastly, how do I get them to come back and do it all over again? So when you think about that circle from start to finish, you got to master those key 4 areas.
Right.
And I think a big part of that is clear communications, right? Clear processes. How does that circle run smooth with those processes and communication in place?
Got it. So this all sounds really good. How do you actually make this happen with service advisors and CSRs, and how do you bring them up to speed quickly in your training? What's that process? What does it look like?
Well, for me personally, I feel like one of the things that all of us that are on this call, every single one of us believe in honesty and integrity, right? So that's the first key thing. The second part of it is we want to make sure our clients understand that we want to give them safe and reliable transportation, right? So we're going to provide a value to that customer customer that maybe a lot of the other shops out there can't provide for them. Not only are we going to provide that value, but we're also going to show them why with the DVI inspections it needs to be done, right? So we're going to go through a detailed explanation and we're going to educate them. We're not just going to try and sell them. We're going to educate them and let them make the decision of what's best for them.
Gotcha.
And additionally, to bring one of your team members up to speed, you need to build confidence in them. You need to help them feel that they can do the job. And when you promise things to your people, you need to follow through. Right. So how am I going to follow through properly if I'm like one day here, one day there? Like they need to have something that they can work from smoothly and know how to follow through the way they should be.
Boy, Laura is absolutely right about that, because you look at it, and if you take the case of a customer service representative, in so many cases when we work with different shops, you've got an owner that's saying, here's how it has to look. You've got a service advisor saying, here's how it has to look. So the owner's saying, bring in every car. The service advisor's saying, stop, we got to get these cars done. And the CSR just literally doesn't know what to do. So it's super important, like Laura mentioned, communication, written systems and procedures is imperative. So we set the stage not only with scripting, here's exactly, how it's going to sound, but then also clear communication and clear direction so they can succeed.
Yeah. Funny, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Chris, but one funny thing is that the average shop, and Gerry will attest to this, the average shop has no idea how high the ceiling is until they get to the point where they can make things run smoothly without chaos, with great communication, and everybody being in the same rowboat rowing the same way. When everybody's pulling the same way, it's amazing what you can get accomplished in your shop.
Yeah. I just wanted to piggyback on what Leanne said. It was interesting. I was on a 20 group call a few days ago, and the conversation got around to how two of the shops ended up firing their CSRs because there was a lot of overlap between what the CSR was doing and what the service advisor was doing. And when they would answer the phone, what they ended up doing was they ended up putting the customer on hold and asking the service advisor what, these questions, because they didn't know enough to ask the questions that they needed to ask. And then when the service advisor got on the phone, they ended up reiterating the entire conversation that they just had with the CSR. So it was interesting for me to hear that conversation going on with these shop owners. And I was thinking about my conversations with you, Leanne, and I think a lot of this is just policies and procedures and having these templates in place and having these people understanding what their role is and where the overlap is and being able to communicate in a way that doesn't create this, create them bumping heads. And it sounds to me like this is what you do a lot of in this service advisor training.
Absolutely. And the great thing about that is not only you're giving your staff the clear communication, but it's translating directly to a fantastic customer service experience, which is ultimately the end.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
I was thinking about, Leanne, as you were saying that, so many times the customer asks for a price on the phone. And what does the person at the shop think? Another cheap customer, somebody just wanting price, all of that. And they just don't know how to handle that. And with a service advisor, a CSR, an owner, maybe a technician answering the phone in some of the smaller shops, everybody probably does it differently. I almost felt like, could you imagine maybe playing a role in a play, let's say Romeo and Juliet, and you don't have the script? They're going to just tell you to go out there and wing it, get this customer in the door. I mean, it would be a mess. So that's the script for the play that we act out every day in our shop. And when you have that in writing, it makes it so much easier for them to do their job.
Yeah. And one of the things you had mentioned to me was about that you cover exhaustively in the training is about finding 5 hours per work on the car and how important that is. And if you could just say a few words about that, I thought that was really interesting to, having that approach.
If I ask most shop owners, what are the age of the vehicles coming into their shop? I know the average age in the US is over 12 years, 12 and a half years last I looked. The mileage on these cars are well over 100,000 miles. Yet I see it time and time again. The service advisor and the technicians are only finding and selling the broken stuff. These cars, when you think about it, they're literally rolling gold mines. And I'm not talking about selling anything unethical. Most of those cars are running around around with the original spark plugs, batteries that are old and going to fail. The list goes on and on and on. So one of the things that we really try to focus on is how many hours are we presenting, right? And that lies on the technician and then the service advisor getting the customer to actually view the inspection. And a good rule of thumb is you can actually sell about 50% of what you present. When somebody says, my goodness, I've got a 98% closing rate, that's a warning sign. If it's much above 50%, you're not selling any maintenance, any recommendations. All you're really doing is selling the broken stuff.
That's great. Anybody else want to say anything about that? I think that's fantastic.
I think that too many times service advisors, they fear talking to the customers about anything more than what the vehicle was brought in for. And what I feel like is missing in that piece is that our job is to make sure these vehicles, again, we're going to talk about safe and reliable, right? And our job is to make sure that these people know, or our clients know, that when they go out tomorrow morning, their car is going to start. We don't sell batteries. We sell your vehicle's going to start tomorrow morning when you leave. So it's important for us to make sure that we take that fear factor out from the service advisors. And as Laura had said earlier, confidence. We give them confidence. We teach them what they need to say and how they need to say it. And we go over that time and time again. It's not like we say it to them once and say, okay, that's it, too bad. We're going to, in our training, when we talked about it, we have monthly or bi-weekly meetings. We talk about those things all the time about how we can handle things better. And we're going to listen to their phone calls. We're going to help teach them the things that they need to say.
Yeah,
You talk about confidence, Bill, and I was just thinking back when I started doing the phone training and the first mystery call I made, I was shaken. My fingers shaking, dialing the number. I was so nervous about it. And then after you do a couple and you practice and I know what to say, and my confidence just went from like a minus to 50, 150%. It's incredible how just the practicing and knowing how to do or say what you need to say builds that confidence.
Yeah, 100%. It was interesting. I was just on a call with I have a business coach that I'm working with, and I was on an intro call with this new coach, and it was funny because we were filling out all the documents, and he said, we usually start with processes and procedures, but gosh, you've got all your processes and procedures here, which is so unusual for someone that I'm just starting out with. And I understand that is what you spend a lot of time with, is you're talking about processes and procedures and making sure that everybody understands what they're doing. You've got a great story, Gerry and Laura, about when you opened your second location, about the difference having processes and procedures in place. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we opened our original location. We had a short stint in a service station for a number of years, and then we opened up a full service repair facility way back around 2000, I think it was. And I often think of that story as I was thinking about this today. Thomas Edison said that he went through, I think, 1,000 tries before he finally got the light bulb right. And they said, wow, you failed 1,000 times. He said, no, I just figured out what not to do 1,000 times. And that was our early career in the auto repair business. We took a lot of swings at the ball, but we figured out what not to do. And through experience and perseverance, we slowly were able to grow that shop. Initially, we got it to well over $1 million with just a few bays. And that was back in 2000 when it was a little more difficult to do, $1 million. But we learned a lot along the way. And when it came time in 2006 for us to open up our second location, and let me tell you a little bit about this location, Cleveland, Ohio, voted one of the poorest cities in the country year after year. That's my hometown, unfortunately, but we got to say the way it is, right? Laura's got the Cleveland sign behind her, but it was an abandoned location. It was closed. The vendors I knew in that area said, don't do it. The guy had a bad reputation. It's going to be really tough to get that business off the ground. And we took that location from 0 to $1 million in just 12 months without me working in it or without us working in it. So what took us 17 years or so to do earlier on, now we were able to do that in just 12 short months by having those processes in place.
And what you're doing in this training is you're saving the scars that you endured when you went through this process yourself. And I think true. Yeah. Okay. So is there anything else in terms of just talking about the training? Give us a little bit more perspective on what happens in the training, what benefits you can receive. What are some of the things that you've seen shops come out of once they've been through the training?
Well, I can say, everything that we teach is going to be it's a working shop, right? It isn't like we've came up with this training and said, okay, this is how we want to do it. We're hoping it's going to work. This is all proven, right? This isn't something that we just guessed at. I can tell you, and I'll just give you a short story. A technician that works for me had carpal tunnel in November 2022. He had to have both of his wrists operated on. And then in February, the right wrist had to be operated on again. And his doctor said to him, you're going to have to change what you do for a living. He was a technician. He was a very good technician. And so he said to me, I like to become a service advisor. Now, he has no prior experience in selling any of that information. So in March, he started working for me as a service advisor. And in March, his average ticket was $286 for the whole month. By April, he had gone up to $410. And just to move it for time stuff, I will tell you that in July of 2024, his average ticket was $827.
That's fantastic.
So, and it's not because we didn't spend any special time with him. He actually just follows the systems and the procedures of how we do it. And he's just great at it, and he is not a salesman by any means. He's very good at communicating with the customers, and he's very good of going over the inspections with the customer, which is a huge part of what we do and we teach.
Yes, exactly. The same exact systems and procedures that we've taught are exactly what turned Michael into a wonderful service advisor with great numbers.
I think about I can remember early on we tried to put together a systems and procedures, and when you think about that, it was the size of a phone book. Those of you who even remember what a phone book is. Now that's kind of really narrowed down to just a few pages at their workstation. So now they got the script, they got the playbook, they know how to do it. It's not hard when they know exactly what to do and what's expected of them.
Yeah, the book would always be in the bottom of a drawer somewhere, and you'd ask them, and they'd pull it out, and they'd brush I think it's here somewhere. Now everything we have taped on the counters, everybody sees, it's on the wall. Much more effective.
What I find interesting, Chris, is that you had said it earlier, and Gerry had mentioned he has a coach. Leanne and I have a coach that we deal with. You have a coach. We all have coaches to make ourselves better, right? Because when you're not learning, you're just standing still. You're just being complacent. You always have to be learning. And one of the things I think that all four of us have done is we always upgrade everything that we learn and how we do things and in the way that we do them. We're always looking for, I don't want to say the next shiny object, but we're looking for something that's easier and better ways to communicate.
Yeah. The other thing is too with the training. Sometimes it's what do I want to say? Analysis by paralysis, or like how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? Like the owners don't even know where to start training their people. Yeah. Like it's just maybe overwhelming for somebody, and so we can break that process down and take it step by step.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, how many times do you see that maybe a shop hires an employee? I'm going to use a service advisor in this example, and in a month he's gone. He just wasn't the right person. Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience, sometimes it's not that there's a lot of bad people, and I don't mean any disrespect to our industry, but I think there's a lot of bad bosses. They don't have the right processes in place to train people effectively. And that's Absolutely. Why that person never works out. And it's an endless cycle. It often seems like I keep hiring and firing the same employee time and time again. Maybe it's not the employee that's coming through the door.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the other part of it, Chris, is I feel like, and I know that the four of us feel this way, it's not just us being trainers. We want to really kind of form a partnership, not only with the people that we're training, but with the owners that are investing in their people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm thinking of one example when we were talking, just an amazing example of somebody that went through the training and ended up, this individual now finds 15 hours for every car that he's working on. And then he reduced his time down to 4 days per week. So a 4-day work week. That's probably not the most typical result of what somebody can come out of this program with, but it's something absolutely that happens. And that is something that one of your attendees has realized.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're talking about Mike from Connecticut.
Yes.
And the thing I can tell you about Mike, we talked about it. He has very driven, looks for all of the bottlenecks in his business. And when we were talking about finding 5 hours per car, Mike took the training and again, implemented it all. And now he's finding 15 hours per car. And again, it's no hard selling. None of this is being a sleazy or that picture I'm picturing Danny DeVito in Used Cars, the movie. Nobody, none of that. It leads to satisfied customers because you put the choices in the customer's hand. And you mentioned, 15 hours per car, 4-day work week. And did I mention he's going to do almost $2 million this year out of 2 service bays? Wow.
That's amazing.
And his employees love to come to work every day.
Hey, there you go. That's music to my ears. It's very easy. I mean, you almost get a waiting list of employees because they know what's going on in your shop and they want to get in there when there's an opening. So that's
true.
really where you want to be.
Absolutely.
So I can already guess what the big questions are going to be. The big questions are, how long do my service advisors have to take out of production? What's the time? What's the expense? How does that all work for this training?
The first thing I would say is start with the live event. As I mentioned before, we're holding a live event near Detroit, Michigan, November 9th and 10th. And I think it's so important to be there. And I would say not just the service advisor, maybe the customer service rep, have the owner there too. You all need to be on the same page. That's why we put together some great pricing for the whole shop to come. Again, you could go to serviceadvisortraining.com to find out more about that information. But everybody's got to be on the same page. One of the biggest things is they say, well, my employee would never do that. Well, what I would say to that is, my goodness, how many times we've got 2 children, and I can't tell you the times that I told my son or daughter about something or to do something or try to teach them something, and it was, falling on deaf ears. And then somebody else told them, and they came home all excited and said, Mom and Dad, guess what I just found out? And it's like, I've been telling you that for years. But again, sometimes, even though you may have well intentions, it just doesn't resonate. So hearing it from somebody else, the other thing is accountability. We hold your people accountable, and that's where the big part is often missing.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say something about that as well is, in the beginning, I shared the story that Brian Nerger shared with me about how he increased his average repair order by 30%. And you walked me at one point through the math on just increasing your average repair order by 10% and what a significant impact that could have. Could you just walk us through that math? Because I think it just boggles the mind just thinking about that.
Sure. I'm a numbers guy. People always tell me the numbers, so show me the money, right? So, if you're on this call or you're on this webinar, this podcast, let's say it correctly. If you're on this podcast, let's just say your average repair order is $500, just middle of the road. A 10% increase, easily doable, $50. Take your car count and multiply it times $50. Bill, you had mentioned some really stout numbers, 3,000 cars, 4,000 cars early on. Go ahead and do the math and see what kind of an additional money that can generate. And here's the thing, without adding any more money for marketing, without adding any usually additional staff, again, without adding any additional expenses, it's all there. All you have to do, literally, in my opinion, is change the words coming out of your mouth.
Doesn't get more simple than that, and that's for sure. So how is this training different than other service advisor trainings?
Well, I'll speak to that. When you look at the 4 of us, I don't want to make us sound old, but we've got 100 plus years of experience sitting right here. And I love the fact, we've got the females, we've got the males, we've got both perspectives that we can speak to our audience, because auto repair is no longer, is it still male dominated? Probably, but we are seeing so many more females getting involved and they bring so many great things to our industry. So between that, and we all have different passion points. So it's like getting, 4 in 1 compared to a lot of other trainings. So
yeah, I think what Leanne said makes a lot of sense. I mean, Leanne's great on the phone. Laura's great on the phones. Laura's a great systems and procedure person. Leanne's is great at getting that warm and fuzzy feeling for your customers to want to come back, right? To make them want to come and visit you again. I'm really big on my shop's culture, and I love operations. And Gerry's the numbers guy, and Gerry and I both love sales, so you just have a lot of passion there. We're all very good at what we do and enjoy what we do. And, frankly, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody's going to need they have a different need, right? So everybody's coming with different expectations. And in school, right, you go to a class and maybe you don't resonate with a teacher and you don't do as well. And then you go to another class, maybe the same kind of subject, and you love the teacher and you just nail it. So there's a lot of different resources available for everybody who's attending. And, they may gravitate towards Gerry or Leanne or me, Bill, whatever their need is. So I feel that we're there to just help and to serve. And I think somebody will find something there.
So, I'm a business owner too. I get training for my staff and my team. And one of the things that I always want to make sure that happens is that the information sticks. What is the accountability in order to make sure that these great ideas that they gather from this training actually get implemented and there's accountability?
There's follow-up involved in the training. So after the live event, we're going to have them put their numbers in a dashboard. We'll be able to see exactly what their average repair order is. You're going to be able to see that average repair order go. It's not just about information, it's about the implementation process. And that's where so many times so many times it stops. People get the information and then they just don't go through to the implementation portion of it. The other thing that I would say is that, imagine, I've heard you mention several times on this call, Chris, about an event you went to. And we've all been to those events. As owners, we go to these, these seminars and these events, and man, we come back and we are charged up and fired up. How many of those events do your sales staff or your customer service folks actually go to? We want to get them fired up and jazzed up. And that's why it's so important for the owners to be there too. So everybody is on the same page. And then you come back and you take that energy back to your shop and you will see those numbers move.
I love that. There's my favorite definition of learning is that you haven't learned until your behavior changes. So the true definition of learning is your behavior changes. Just because you can regurgitate something that you've come into proximity with doesn't mean that you have learned it. So I love that, in being able to have accountability after the fact.
I was thinking of the what if I train them and they leave? Worse yet, what if you train them and they stay? Don't train them and they stay. I messed that up. But if you train them and they leave, and that's happened to us all, we invested in a technician or a service advisor, and then they found the grass is greener somewhere else. But heaven forbid, what if you don't invest in their training and they stay?
Absolutely, 100%. Well, this has been great. Can you just, in any final thoughts, and just let everybody know that's watching or listening to this podcast, let them know where they can go to get more information and details?
Sure. Absolutely. The website is serviceadvisortraining.com, and all the details and information will be there.
And the other thing that I would say is, as a business owner, we're always worried about costs. The training is very affordable. For most shops, it's less than one average repair order. And if it's not, we need to get that average repair order up, right? But less than one average repair order, you can send your whole team to that training.
Outstanding.
For me, I think we're going to help you provide value not only to your employees, but to your customers.
And we've talked a lot about increasing the shop revenue, but that all leads to, with these systems and procedures, the one thing that I think everybody wants, and that's freedom. They want their time. We can get more money, we can't get more time.
That's right. And that's why we got into this, right? Time and money freedom.
Exactly.
Right. And where did it go? Well, thank you all very much for being here today. And I highly encourage everyone to go out, check out this training. I've worked with probably 2 or 3 dozen shops that have gone or put their service advisors through this training, and I have not heard anything bad about it at all. So I highly recommend that you reach out and check out this training. You'll be glad you did.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Serviceadvisortraining.com.